Today's video was selected for you by my gorgeous patrons, so thank you very much to them for making this selection. And if you would like to be involved in future video polls and also have access to the Discord, the one card riff video every month and other privileges as well, check out the tiers. I will leave all the information down below. Hello chickens, today I'm going to drink my coffee, but I'm going to spill some tea. Do you see what I did there? Okay, so I've had this video in my mind for a while now, and I've been sort of slowly weaving things together and making notes for it, trying to figure out how to approach it. Basically, I know I've made some videos before on my channel about my experiences with depression and, you know, my sort of stories and some tips and stuff like that. And I will leave a playlist down below that will give you access to those videos. So if you want to know more about my personal experiences and ways that I have found to help me deal with my depression, then you can go and have a little rummage around in my archives, as it were. But I do not have a video yet until today, until this one. I feel like I've never made a video that explores some of the weirder symptoms of depression from my perspective. This is just my journey. Some of the symptoms that are not discussed that much in the media, some things that I experience with my depression that I've just plainly never seen or heard anyone else talking about. That is what this video is. So even though I will probably likely give some tips and some advice through this video about things that you can do to deal with these experiences, what I'm basically doing instead is just breaking down the experiences themselves. There's a couple of reasons that I have wanted to do this one for a while, guys. First reason is because I am very interested in breaking down mental health stigma by talking openly and honestly about things that have gone on in my own journey with mental health. And I have tried to do that throughout my years of having this channel. I think it's really powerful and really important if we can, and if we feel safe and able to do so, to share our mental health stories with each other. I think it really does help to break down the stigma and the prejudice and the shame and any embarrassment or weirdness that we might feel about experiencing things related to mental health. The other reason I want to do it is empathy, plainly and simply. I would like to know if other people experience any of these things as part of their depression, or, you know, if you don't have a diagnosis of depression or a strong sense that you do have depression, then let me know anyway. If you're watching this anyway, kudos to you, first of all. And second of all, hit me up down below, anyone and everyone, hit me up if you experience any of these things. I think the empathy would be good for me, and I'm sure the empathy will be good for us to exchange with each other. So I am now going to take you through a list that I have been making for the last few months of weird shit that happens to me when I'm depressed, okay? Just things that are either random, annoying as fuck, or I just have not seen people discuss that much, and we're gonna get into it. I will do a little bit of ranting, just to be, you know, warning you right now out of the gate. And the other thing I want to say right out of the gate is obviously trigger warning, darlings, okay? I am going to be talking about low moods, sadness, apathy, depression, mental health issues. So please make yourself safe. And if you cannot watch this right now, if it is not for you, if you feel like you are going to be brought down by the things I'm talking about, no offense taken, click off, come back when you're feeling safer. Or indeed, if you do not need to watch this video, you know, don't watch it. I know that for some people that deal with these issues, it's not even that useful to sit around watching other people or listening to other people talking about what they go through with it. Like, it's not necessarily useful for everyone. So please don't think that you're obligated, if you do have depression, to watch this. Okay, first thing I want to say right out of the gate, I experienced this thing at the beginning and the end of my depression, and I refer to it as the grey bookends. And basically, it's exactly what it says on the tin, really. It's the grey bits at the beginning and the end of a depressive episode. And those grey bookends are the periods of time, usually lasting for a few weeks each. I would say 2 to 4 weeks each, so between a fortnight and a month, that will indicate to me when I'm coming into a depressive episode and when I'm leaving the depressive episode. The grey bookend bit of time at the beginning is usually I get some physical symptoms when I'm going into a depression. My circadian rhythm gets very, very weird. Quite often I will go into sleeplessness. Sometimes that can be related to hypomania, which I'm not going to go massively into in this video because that's more connected to my specific diagnosis. But please do let me know down below if you would like to know more about that. I think I've certainly received a couple of requests actually to talk about my experience with mania and hypomania before, so maybe I will. But sometimes, you know, the sleeplessness is related to that. Sometimes it's just racing thoughts. Sometimes it's the feeling that I don't want to go to sleep because I'm having bad dreams, or I don't know if I'm going to have a bad dream. I start to worry about having nightmares at the beginning of a depressive episode. So that's one giveaway. That's something that shows me that, like, okay, maybe I'm going into a depression. Another thing that will happen is sometimes I will sleep excessively, and it will usually be in the day. So I'll stay up all night with my racing thoughts and starting different projects, or just being worried about going to sleep, but then I might need to cat nap in the day. The napping that I do during the day is sometimes the result of the nighttime sleeplessness, as I mentioned, but sometimes it's not even that. I'm not even necessarily dealing with much sleeplessness. I just want to escape from the impending doom of the dark wave, which is what I call my depression. Okay, the dark wave is where I'm fully into it, you know, and it's not feeling good. So if I know that that is impending, I'm sort of wanting to nap a lot to get away from that reality. The other thing that happens that shows me I'm going into a depression is listlessness at times, not tuning in completely to what people are saying. I'm much, much better with that than I used to be. But that used to be a massive thing for me, was when I would be like, oh, I've checked out, you know, if something is not important. I know it sounds horrible, but like, if a friend is just randomly talking to me about something and it's not necessarily essential that I tune in, I may tune out to give myself like a break from reality. So that can sometimes happen. And it's good for me to know that that is a symptom, because I can check that and deal with that, because I don't enjoy to be checked out. I like to be present and correct when I'm awake. And the other thing that will happen that I know is a sure sign that I'm going into a depression is that things that usually wouldn't bother me that much start to really bother me, like emotionally. So I will be really out of sorts when certain things are discussed, or when I see certain things like on a documentary or randomly on YouTube or whatever. I will notice that, like, oh, okay, that's going in with a particular like knife-like quality to it that normally wouldn't be there, you know. It never really causes me to need to turn anything off or anything like that. I think I'm just the type of person who doesn't take that course of action. I don't usually pull away from a subject or a documentary or a conversation at all because it's troubling to me, but I will notice that it is troubling to me, and I will notice if I'm having also sometimes a physiological reaction to that. And I could give you a short list of what those things are that become more troubling to me. I won't go into it because I have tons to say in this video, but there's definitely certain things where I'm like, oh, okay, that's bothering me, and that probably means I am going into a dark wave, you know. On the other side, the other grey bookend, which is the more positive one because it means I'm leaving the depressive episode, I could characterise that particular period of time very simply by saying I start to feel better. I know it sounds really basic, but like, I just start to feel better. I start to feel more in touch with reality again. I'm happy and grateful for the little things in life. I'm less apathetic. I'm more positive. I start to envision a beautiful future, or even a beautiful next 24 hours. And I just start to feel more engaged and more like at one, and more embodied as well, because during the depression, sometimes I can feel disembodied, at times. So my connection with my body is not as strong, and I have to work really hard to keep that connection with my body going in a positive way. So as I'm leaving the depressed episode, I start to feel more embodied and more positive. When I'm not depressed, when I'm not going through what I would characterize as a depressive episode, it does not mean that I am always happy and I'm always on and I'm never sad. It just means that the sadness or the unpleasant feelings that I'm having are usually more easily connected to something obvious, whether that's, you know, something personal, something professional, something environmental, something I just saw, something that just happened. I can connect it to something. The ill feeling, the sadness is connected to something or to a series of obvious factors. When I'm depressed, there doesn't have to be anything that is going on that is bringing me down. I just feel down as a rule, you know? So that would be like the clear difference there. So yeah, I have these grey bookend time periods. As I know I'm sliding into a depression, I never try to like stop it or to try and turn around, to try and reverse it in some way. I have learned for the last 10 years, I've learned that there's no point in doing that. I think I'm always going to go into depressed episodes. It's part of my reality. It's been part of my reality since childhood. It's genetic, partly. There's a genetic component in my issue for sure. So I'm more in prepping mode than I am in avoidance. You know, I'm not trying to turn the ship around. I know it's going into the dark wave. So for me, it's about like, have I got armbands? Have I got, you know, a map or whatever? The way that I prep for a depressed episode is I tell people that I think I'm going to go into a depressed episode. I tell the important people in my life. I don't hide it. I don't pretend. I'm not into doing that anymore. And so I'm very honest about it. And I gather around me the stuff that I know makes me feel good. You know, the books that I like. I try and tidy up my flat because, as you will see later in this video, messiness and untidiness is such a key part of depression for so many people, myself included. So I try to clean the flat as much as I can, tidy everything up, because I know that's going to get missed once I become depressed. And I also try to journal about my feelings, and I try to make some commitments with myself that even though I'm going through a depression, I'm still going to try and do things like hit the gym or at least do home workouts. I'm still going to try and leave the house. I'm still going to try and communicate with the people I love. It's not going to be an exact science, and every depressed episode is different, but I try as much as I can to honour my promises to myself as I'm going through that initial phase of recognizing that I'm going to get depressed, you know? So that's kind of how it works for me. Something about depression that I do see mentioned, but I just want to mention it here as well in this video, is that depression is just quite simply not about always feeling as terrible as you can feel and, you know, not wanting to be here anymore and feeling like everything's as bad as it can be. There are those parts of it, but a lot of depression is just not knowing how the fuck you feel. Feeling things that you cannot really describe, like emotions that don't really seem to usually exist, but they're just like weird mishmashes of things. All you know is that they're unpleasant and you wish they would end, but they're incredibly confusing, so you really just can't describe them. You're not sure, right? So yeah, you just get alexithymia or alexithymia. I don't know, I've never heard anyone say the word, I just read it often. You know, you can't identify your emotions. Sometimes you feel listless, disengaged, bored by everything, apathetic towards everything, indifferent towards everything. Again, I wouldn't say that that's in keeping with like really strong, negative, painful, I want to end it type of emotions, but just not feeling like anything is really worth your attention. Nothing has meaning necessarily. The fear of not being able to find meaning in stuff. The feeling that the search for meaning that you used to have, or the sense of meaning that you used to have, was a lie, or is, you know, was kind of an illusion or a naivety. This is a lot of it. And I think as well that depression can be, you can kind of go through this feeling of not trusting yourself. That's certainly something that happens with me. Like, I struggle to trust how I'm feeling because it's changeable, or because I can't describe it, because it sort of flits around hand in hand with this experience that a lot of depressed people have of recognizing that it's not just about the most painful emotions you can feel and the most extreme negativity you can feel. It's also about like boredom, being disengaged, not knowing how you feel, feeling like, you know, nothing really. A lot of people with depression, myself included, really worry about telling people that they're depressed or opening up to certain people about depression because of the misunderstanding that exists around it. A lot of people seem to think that being depressed means feeling like really self-loathing, really deeply like distressed about the world and your place in it, wanting to potentially like not be here anymore, that kind of thing, really extreme stuff. And so you worry that if you have a better day with your depression and you are engaged, or you do have a good time, or you are seen on social media laughing and smiling in a photograph, you worry that people that you've told that you're depressed will think that you are better again, or that you were lying, or that you were over exaggerating, because actually depression is not often characterized by just the worst feelings you can ever feel. It's a lot of different things, and you will have those moments of brightness in a depression. Hopefully there will be those little moments that you can clutch onto where things feel better, and also you are perfectly capable of masking your depression and pretending that you do feel okay and pretending that you are engaged. There are tons of people going through depressed episodes right now who are doing that exact thing. They are pretending, they are doing it for the sake of other people, they're doing it for the sake of their friends, the sake of their children, whatever. They're doing it because they've got to go to work, they've got to get on with things. And so they do find ways of just like adapting or seeming to have adapted. And so there is also that worry that people will not understand that and that they will think that you are not depressed when you very much are. So it's difficult. That particular misunderstanding about depression can make it very difficult. It can make you doubt your own experience of depression, and it can certainly make you worry about how people perceive your depression. One thing that particularly has pissed me off about the portrayal of depression in the media over the years has been how sanitized it is and how nice it looks to me compared to my actual lived experience of depression. And I'm sure this is something that at least a handful of people watching this are going to empathize with. When I see depression characterized in TV programs, when I've seen the way that it's portrayed in memes on like Facebook and Instagram and Tumblr and shit like that, when I see the way that it's described, the imagery that is used sometimes in the media, in various aspects of the media to portray depression, I think to myself, I wish my depression was like that. It looks very clean, very glamorous, very together, compared to the actual lived experience of depression. You know, like there just isn't enough effort made to visually describe what it's like to feel depressed, you know? Like, for example, this is just for an example, okay, I'm just pulling this out of the air right now. Imagine, if you will, a actress portraying depression for an advert or a TV program or whatever the hell it is, and she has a full face of makeup, but maybe like she's crying a bit, maybe mascara is running, I don't know, but basically her hair is in place, her makeup is on, she's sitting on a couch with no rubbish around, no glasses or cups or anything, wrapped in a blanket, and appearing to be upset, right? Now, that could be somebody's very legitimate experience of depression, and that's fine. But I very rarely see the type of depression that I have experienced in my life. My depression has caused fly infestations before. My depression has caused so much mess and hoarding and craziness and clutter and washing up stacked this high before in my life, you know. My depression has caused me to have to walk around my entire flat on tiptoes in the past because there was no visible carpet. There was crap everywhere, right? There was just like empty cans of drink, empty sandwich packets where I just couldn't cook for myself for weeks on end, and clothes everywhere, paperwork. It does not give me pleasure to talk about this. It makes me feel ashamed. It makes me feel scared and ashamed to say that that is what depression does. And one of the reasons it makes me feel so like raw and scared to say like, guys, depression gets messy, is because you just don't see it. You actually just really don't see it portrayed honestly a lot of the time when people are claiming to be addressing the situation in a hard-hitting TV drama, or they're addressing the situation by advertising their service to you about, you know, what can help you when you've got depression. You're usually looking at a very sterile, very comfortable portrayal of what it's like. You don't see the mess, the chaos, the nightmare that your actual environment can become. You don't see the mess that you can become. You know, you don't see the unkempt hair and just like a total mess, like no makeup, like your face red, strewn with tears, your eyes puffy, just looking like crap, feeling like crap, your environment looking like chaos, right? You just don't really see that enough. And I think that is one of the reasons that I am mind-bendingly scared to admit that I've had flies in my kitchen, you know, from being depressed. Like, I'm 37 now, so I've had many severe depressed episodes in my life. You know, I've had my whole my teens, but certainly my whole 20s to get to grips with how bad it could fucking get. And certainly into my 30s, I've had a couple of big bouts, like big giant ones, you know, one of them lasting for just over a year, perhaps more, perhaps longer. And so, you know, I've had a long time to recognize that there isn't actually that much of an honest portrayal of the nightmare that your outer life can become. There are just so many unglamorous factors to depression, you know, like like I said, as a sort of extension of talking about like how the kitchen can get or how your place can get, like you can be so depressed that when you go out for the first time in days because you finally managed to go out, you don't want to go back to your place because it smells bad or because there's crap everywhere and you wouldn't even know where to begin. Like, I have literally at one time in my life slept in a tiny corner of my bed because there was stuff all over the bed, guys, like that I could not deal with, you know. So I would just make myself a tiny little corner like a little animal and just sleep in that corner. I have been terrified of going to the dentist because I was so down for so long that I was convinced that the dentist was going to tell me like, you've screwed your teeth up, your teeth are going to fall out, because your personal hygiene, your risk of self-neglect, those things, you know, really sort of become a danger zone with depression. I have had dermatillomania during a depressed episode and picked my skin on my fingers and thumbs so much that they were just all bleeding, you know. It's not pleasant to describe these things and it's not pleasant to think about, but I'm saying these things because I want people who watch this who might have experienced similar to be like, okay, that's part of it. You know, those things that I have experienced, I don't have to be ashamed of that. And you don't. So yeah, I just think it's very sanitized. It's very clinical. Sometimes it's often very, very glamorous. There's a lot of very glamorous portrayals of depression in the wording that's used about it and certainly the imagery. And I don't relate to it. I never did relate to it. And it just used to make me feel worse when I was trying to use online resources in particular to help me to feel less alone when it came to depression. It just made me feel worse because these portrayals did seem so far away from the reality of what I was experiencing. I don't want to make too many caveats and disclaimers in this video because, as I've already said, that I am talking about my experiences, but I just wanted to mention for the record that extreme messiness is not always a symptom of depression. You know, and certainly there can be things like depression comorbid with OCD that might actually cause someone to be, you know, very, very clinically clean about their environment in a very fastidious manner. And that actually can be a sign that they are more depressed than usual, or they are in a depressed episode. So I'm you know, in no way saying that my characterization of depression is everybody's. I'm just saying that the portrayal of depression pisses me off. Okay, like there isn't enough of that kind of thing because it's not sexy. It's not sexy. It's not anything that anybody wants to admit happens. And so I think it needs to be talked about. Like, what is the point of talking about breaking down mental health stigma if I'm just going to put a resource into the world that is another glamorized, sterilized description of something that can get really ugly and really bad. My depression definitely affects my ability to cope with my chronic pain. So I have a back injury from a long time ago. I've got a profound herniation in my L4, which is right at the bottom by my bum. It is, you know, it requires occasionally some pain management, not very often anymore, thankfully. I've managed to deal with it over the course of a long time with a lot of like core work and weights and stuff like that. And so it doesn't give me as much trouble as it used to by a long way. Prior to me turning 30, I had like a 5-year stretch where it was really bad. And I did notice that being in a depressed episode wildly affected my ability to deal with it. Not only because when you're depressed, as I said, your risk of self-neglect is higher. So for me, that would sometimes result in me not actually ingesting my pain management pills. So sometimes I would forget to take my pills. I would forget if I had taken them and thought I had taken them, but I hadn't taken them. And that became apparent when I would be stiff and hunched over and couldn't walk or whatever. Sometimes I wouldn't take them because of self-loathing and the feeling of like, what's the point in anything? So I just wouldn't take them. And so that's definitely part of what caused me to find it difficult to deal with my pain. But the other thing is just that serotonin and, you know, dopamine and good feelings help you deal with physical pain. It doesn't stop the fact that you have an injury or a chronic illness, you know, but it will help you to deal with it in your mind. You will be able to be better centered in yourself, to know what you need, to put that into action and to feel more positive despite the fact that you are going through ailments or pain symptoms or whatever. So I definitely wanted to mention that as well. That is a really annoying symptom of depression, is that you struggle to deal with physical pain, ailments, you know, recurring issues with the body. And that kind of goes hand in hand as well with feeling disembodied. So feeling like you're not connected to your body, your relationship with your body becomes very fragmented and very kind of like tenuous. My experience with depression has oftentimes led me into disembodiment. I have dissociated, and that's another thing that I won't go massively into in this video, but I might talk more about the fullness of my own diagnosis in a separate video, because dissociation can be a part of it. You know, but even sort of leaving that aside, the feeling of not really being connected to the body, or indeed very severely not wanting to be connected to my body, right? Wanting to just leave my body. And I don't mean to, you know, not be alive anymore, but I mean, I don't want like access to any knowledge of my flesh, bones, muscles, hair, teeth, anything. That can be very severe with depression. So I wanted to mention that too. Like, there are definitely times in your reality as someone with a chronic illness or an injury that causes chronic pain where you are more or less capable of dealing with it. And I think it gets very often overlooked, the connection between depression and low pain threshold, you know, so just not being able to deal as much with the pain that you are experiencing usually, and therefore feeling like that's become worse. But also just handling your pain management, handling your symptoms, mentally preparing yourself for a day where you're going to experience pain somewhere on the spectrum, from 1 to 10. The spectrum is always going to go up to that higher part of the spectrum pretty much when you have depression, at some point or another. Like, it's just so common but not spoken about, I find, you know. So I wanted to mention that too. Another thing I wanted to mention, which for me is a very annoying and weird symptom of my depression, is that I don't like anything that I have to wear. I don't like any of my clothes, and that's particularly weird with me because I have some very, very rad clothing, okay? But I just don't like any of it. I don't think any of it fits me properly. I don't think any of it is fit for purpose. I don't want to go outside wearing any of it. None of it makes any sense. None of it is anything that I like, and none of it goes together properly. So that's extremely irritating, darlings, extremely irritating. I will say that this is probably connected to like body dysmorphia. I certainly experience body dysmorphia as part of my depression, but it's not even always that. It's just like, even when I'm not experiencing the sense that there is something fundamentally wrong with the shape and size of my being, my physical being, I just don't like anything that I have to wear. And I often, when I'm in a depressed episode, will go back up to my flat and change again, go back down, try to leave, realise something isn't quite right. I wanted a different bag, I wanted a different jacket, and I'll go upstairs and change again. I am late for things a lot more often when I am going through a depressive episode, and that is because I am changing, okay? I'm trying to find that magic combo, and it's not really about that, it's about my mind. I do persevere with it and keep trying to find that combination, because there are things that feel better or worse, but like, quite honestly, I'm just going to be real here, nothing feels actually right, and there does come a point where I have to acknowledge that, okay, that is the depression. It's not my wardrobe. There is nothing wrong with my wardrobe. There is something wrong with, my brain space. So that's certainly something that can happen, which is so irritating. Hit me up in the comments if that happens to you as well. I actually never let myself declutter clothes, donate clothes, give clothes away, sell clothes, anything like that, if I know that I am in the middle of a dark wave. Like if I know that I'm going through a depression, I will not make any executive decisions that would involve giving clothes away or having clothes leave my possession, because I've done that before when I was younger. And I thought to myself, this will be a good way to deal with my pain and bad feeling and low mood, will be to sort my clothing out, because there's so much clothing here that I don't like anymore and it doesn't make sense, and I don't need these dresses and I don't want that anymore. And then come to find out, oh, that was the depression talking. Now I really miss that fucking dress. So I try and be very clear with myself about when is a good time to make decisions about belongings, especially clothing, and when it's not such a great time to make those decisions. A personal gripe of mine when it comes to depression that I wanted to mention is that depression, in my case anyway, I think definitely makes me very, very understanding of other people's low moods, crappy behaviors, patterns of unpleasantness, in the way that they speak to me or the way that they are around me. I've noticed that because I've gone through such difficult times and such low periods of my life, I try to extend as much compassion and understanding as possible. That in and of itself is not necessarily a bad part of my depression per se. What's bad, and what I really have struggled with before, is the fact that the same courtesy, compassion and understanding is not always extended to me. And that I find to be really, really difficult. In fact, I experienced a situation a couple of years ago now where a person in my life was really at times being not great to me, like really not great to me. There were just certain times where they would storm off while I was in the middle of talking for no particular reason, or like get annoyed with me for having a great therapy session. That was one thing that happened that I thought was just like really like so out of pocket and really hurt me at the time. Just snapping at me and stuff like that. But I just accepted that this person was clearly going through something really difficult and dark with their mental health and the reality of what they were going through. But at the same time, I was also going through something really difficult with my mental health that they were totally aware of. And I definitely also was, I'm sure, not behaving always as the best version of myself. But that same courtesy was not returned to me at all. Like, it really just, like, this person just, honestly, I feel like wanted me to be perfect all the time and just couldn't even remotely feel that they were responsible for giving me any leeway whatsoever. Like, I feel like I really tried to be so compassionate towards this person, but my issues, my problems, which I freely admitted to and was really, really struggling with, were not taken into consideration at all. And that person just like very, very like sharply and I think cruelly just cut me out. And I apologise for anything that I may have done or the way I may have acted or any of that stuff. Didn't ask for an apology from them, even though I think I was more than due one. But I didn't ask for it from them. And it's that kind of thing that I sort of look back on in hindsight and think, you know what, you've got to be really careful that you don't try and set up a false economy in your head between the amount of leeway, compassion, love, understanding you're willing to give to someone and how much they're willing to give to you in return. They may be willing to give none to you in return. They may have no wiggle room for you, no leeway, no willingness to understand where you might be coming from. And so if you're going to give your compassion, your understanding, your appreciation of someone's position, if you're going to give that to them, you have to understand that it will be with no proviso that they're going to do that for you in return. That's very sad. And it's been a real difficulty for me over the course of time to like come to healing over things of that nature, for sure. I mean, not everybody that's going through an episode of depression is going to really be able to keep hold of their empathy and understanding or, you know, try and maintain a sense of kindness. And I'm not saying they should, but I'm saying it's deeply hurtful, confusing, saddening, shocking when you do manage to keep hold of that and really like deeply love someone still, despite what they're going through, and find that when you are going through something, there is no reprieve from their extremely severe judgment of you. You know, that can be really hurtful. So I've definitely had to sort of like reappraise that in my reality and think about what that means for me and how I can still operate with empathy and understanding, whilst also expecting on some level that people I love in my life are going to appreciate when I'm not 100% and I'm going through a hell of a lot as well. And, you know, I know that somebody won't always be the best fucking version of themselves, the highest, you know, them at their highest potential. I don't expect that. You know, and an apology is always nice and it, you know, smooths things over, whatever. But every individual situation is different. But to give more than one apology for anything that you may have done to cause any offence or harm or upset or anything, and to be met with silence, with being ghosted in return, is just, it takes a while to get over that. So I think you have to be really careful how much energy and how much appreciation of somebody else's issue you actually give if you are expecting anything at all in return from them, because it may never come. When I'm depressed, I often have a very, very weird relationship with nostalgia. It can go from an enjoyable trip down memory lane to a toxic, painful, agonizing tangle of nostalgic thoughts and feelings and revisitation of old stuff that becomes like almost unbearable. So I have to be really careful with nostalgia for sure. I was watching a really interesting video by Mina. Is it Mina Lay? She's really good. Mina Lee. I can't think of her name right now. I'll leave the video down below. It was about biopics and whether or not Hollywood is making too many biopics at this point and why that might be. And it was really interesting. And I had just watched a lot of biopics lately. So biopics, not biopics. I always said biopics, but she says biopics. Anyway, in any event, yeah, basically she was saying that some studies were done about how people like to return to the past and revisit and re-enjoy old stuff whenever they feel like things are uncertain or painful or whatever. And that is why a lot of those things are being made now, like to look back on former stars from the past. You know, let's look at Marilyn Monroe, let's look at James Dean, let's look at Marlon Brando, let's look at all these people from the past and old films and old bands and like stuff like that. She said that actually during lockdown, that's part of the reason that so many people revisited old bands and old comic books and old films that they loved and stuff. And I definitely did that during lockdown. I remember specifically loads of things that I re-explored during lockdown that I had not gotten into for years. I hadn't watched those things for years. I was watching films from my childhood. I was putting The Wiz on and crying. Oh my God, have you ever seen anything more beautiful than Diana Ross in The Wiz? Because you haven't, all right? You haven't. If you've seen The Wiz, that's it. Just, oh God, she's just amazing in that film. Anyway, so yeah, I was like going down memory lane. I was watching all these different things from my childhood and I was looking up loads of old stuff, like even old adverts and stuff that I was remembering. I definitely got nostalgia fever during lockdown, and it makes sense because the past is often, well, it's a point of certainty. It's an abstract certain point in time where at least you know what went on because it's already happened. The dust has well and truly settled on that part of history. So, you know, to an extent, it makes sense that you go back to those things. And I was watching this video the other day and I was thinking, okay, that's probably why it's a component of my depression as well, that I go into nostalgia, because my future looks murky, uncertain, or depressing. I just don't like it. I don't like looking at it. I don't enjoy building it in my head. The present is a tangle of complete mess and chaos. And so naturally, I will fall back into the kind of like soft cot, as it were, of nostalgic stuff. So it definitely can have its moments of being very soothing, very healing, very comforting. It can be an escape, but it also can have a really horrible undertone after a while of helplessness, that I can't go back there, that I can't have some of the things back there that had to be left there. And don't get me wrong, my childhood, my adolescence was not a bed of roses by any means, but there were these really comfortable forms of escape that were not connected to things like needing to hold down a job, worrying about bills and rent, stuff like that, worrying about the empire that I've built with the business that I run full time, that kind of stuff. I didn't have to worry about that when I was like 6, 8, 10, 12, you know. It wasn't as much my reality, of course, those things, as it is now, you know. I don't think I worried as much then as I do now about things like my mortality or getting majorly sick or like dying before my mum, for example, because she doesn't need another one, believe me on that. So these things weren't in my mind as much then. So it makes sense that when I revisit like a film or a book from my past, that is giving me a sense of comfort and escape during depression. At the same time, I'm pulling up lots of feelings about what I can't have any longer, what isn't available to me, certain aspects of simplicity from the past that are not within my possession now and will probably never be in my possession again. You know, the only way that I had that kind of escape in adulthood was going mad because I didn't have any other responsibilities. I was literally like on suicide watch and going to therapy every other day. But that wasn't a ideal way to go back into, you know, no responsibility or whatever. So anyway, I could harp on about this so much. And I know that a lot of you guys do want me to make a video about nostalgia and our relationship with nostalgia. And I definitely want to talk about that in another video. I've been making some notes for it. And I would also like to talk about how nostalgia can be very useful when it comes to witching, when it comes to magic. So I'm definitely going to make a video that includes that as well. But anyway, I just wanted to mention nostalgia. That's a big one. It can be a double-edged sword. I tend to think of nostalgia during depression as a very strong elixir that is nice in small glasses. But when I take a massive dose of it, when I start drinking like a pint of that stuff, not good. And I feel sick and I need to stop and the room starts spinning and it's just no. So I try to recognise that nostalgia can be useful to a point and that I should not overdo it. Phone addiction is a massive part of my depression. I get addicted to my phone. I do always try and implement a digital ban in the bedroom. So whenever I'm at home and I'm sleeping in my bed at home, I try to leave my phone on charge in the kitchen. And I have an alarm clock in my bedroom. And the alarm clock is what wakes me up in the morning. And that is because if I wake up with my phone, whether I'm depressed or not, I'm going to end up looking at my phone first thing in the morning before I've done any meditation or gone to my altar or even decided what I'm going to do with any free time that I have in the day. So I always try to implement the digital ban, and that probably came from being a depressed person. It probably came from recognizing what a slippery goddamn slope it is into complete social media hostage situation where you are just going around Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you know, TikTok, if you're into it, I can't seem to get myself into it. I'm trying because I know I'm missing loads of gold, but like, I just can't handle a lot of things about TikTok. Anyway, TikTok is not an aspect of my depression. But if it was, you know, that I could think of some reasons why it might be. But yeah, so phone addiction, definitely. And phone addiction goes hand in hand with a few things. So like I wanted to mention in this video what I tend to become addicted to, because I think that's really important to note. I have times with my depression where I will have my phone and I will have like some free time or some escape time, if you will. And I will start going into social media, going onto YouTube or whatever. And I realize that what I'm looking at has become particularly fine-tuned and obsessive, and it's probably not that helpful to me. So for example, I will go down these really dark research rabbit holes, and I will start with one thing and I'll go deeper and deeper and deeper. Like I'll be looking at someone who died in a really tragic, screwed up way, and then I'll wonder what happened to their children. This is such a key example for me, guys. I'll be like, well, what happened to her son that she had with that guy? And then I'll research him. And then I'll realize that he wrote a book about his experiences. And then I'll look at what he wrote in the book. And then I'll look about where he died and I'll see what cemetery he's in. And then I'll start reading about like the wider implications of what happened to them and how what that means in terms of society or the history of the country at the time. And honestly, by the end, I sometimes do not remember how it all started. And I have to track back in my mind and be like, how did I end up here? What the fuck? And then I'll look at the time, and that will just add to any depressive feeling that I'm already having of like, oh my God, it's now 3 a.m. I swear it was just 10 p.m. a minute ago. What the hell happened, you know? So that's one thing. I go down dark research rabbit holes, and I definitely notice that. And sometimes I can't stop myself in the moment. I've become better at it over time, okay? You become like a one-woman elite fighting force when you've had depression as long as me. A one-person elite fighting force. I don't know what genders everyone is watching this, but I feel very strongly like I had to become, you know, Xena, princess warrior of depression. So I've become better at understanding that that is part of what happens with me when I'm depressed, and I try and pull myself out. But sometimes you cannot pull out. You just can't. You just go and go and go until it's 3 a.m. Another thing that obsesses me is stuff that usually would mean nothing to me, like random internet dramas involving a bunch of people on YouTube that I do not even know. Don't know them, don't watch their content, I'm not subscribed to them, it's not my thing. And yet suddenly, like the whole of Dramageddon of the makeup community, for example, is just really important for me to get to the bottom of. And I have to watch, like, I have to put hour-long video essays about it in the background, like while I'm doing something or whatever, or as I'm falling asleep. I think part of that is that I live alone. And so sometimes I actually just want a friendly voice that's not talking about something that I particularly would get overly upset about or charged up about, you know? So sometimes it's literally just a case of I want to hear somebody's voice and I want them to be talking about something that I'm actually not that emotionally invested in. And it will be like good commentary, somebody with a really good use of language, someone who can keep me interested, but the subject matter is really not that much of a big deal. And that can be really sort of protective for me during depression. So sometimes I consciously acknowledge that I'm looking at like old internet drama from 8 years ago and like learning all about it, or I'm looking at some scandal that happened with online people that I just normally wouldn't care about, or even watching things like, you know, I don't know, just watching like loads of critiques of a specific company that sell clothes that I don't care about, that I never knew about them before, but they did some scandalous things. And so now I'm watching video after video about that company. That can happen. Just like weird scandals and weird stuff, basically. But sometimes I recognize I'm doing that and I just let myself do it because I understand that it's probably just wanting to hear someone's voice, wanting to hear them break something down that they have all the information for, so they can give me a sense of like sturdiness. But I don't really care about the subject matter to the point where it's going to upset me if I'm feeling really vulnerable. You know, like, for example, when I'm depressed, that is not a good time to watch documentaries on, you know, like anything to do with ecological disaster, anything to do with, I don't know, like gun violence, or like it's probably not a good time. I always watch really, really serious things, you know, political and cultural commentary and stuff like that. But even I understand when I'm in a depressed episode to the point where that's not going to be helpful. Whereas if I just want to learn everything about a particular scandal with a makeup YouTuber, I mean, that's really not going to harm me in the end. It's just going to be essentially a waste of my intellect. It's a waste of my intellect. And that might annoy me, but not to the point where I'm going to make myself learn something serious when I'm really, really depressed, because sometimes that's not actually useful. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention about that whole business of being obsessed with things and doing research on things is that a couple of times in my life being super depressed, I have become obsessed with certain celebrities as well. Like, I just have to know every film they were in and every quote they ever said. And I look through all these interviews and I trawl through, and I never used to see how extreme that was with my depressed episodes until the algorithm thing started happening online. So I'm sure that there were always algorithms that detected what I was interested in on Facebook or whatever and sort of catered to me. But it's much, much more extreme now with like stories and reels and, you know, that kind of slot machine vibe that you get where you can refresh your feed over and over. Like, that was never the case when I started using things like Facebook. Whereas now the algorithms are keenly set up to do a few different things to you at one time when you're on social media. And so it became easier for me to see when I was becoming obsessed with certain celebrities during depression, because I would go onto the search function of Instagram, for example, where it just shows you things that it thinks you might like. And there might be like 5 million images and videos of this one celebrity that I realised I was like researching to within an inch of their fucking life the night before or whatever. So the algorithm function on social media has actually helped me in a way understand when certain things have become obsessive. I have made a video about communication anxiety. I will leave that down below if you want to watch it. I do have communication anxiety. It is sometimes linked to my depression. One of the key ways that I find that communication anxiety can come up is in relation to feeling very, very sad that certain people haven't contacted me, haven't checked on me, haven't replied to a message that I've sent them. But at the same time, when they do contact me, I panic and I don't open the message. Does anyone else have this? What the fuck is this? What is that about? It's so strange. I also become hell-bent on the idea that a specific person should get back in touch with me or contact me or whatever, and then I overlook how beautiful and joyful it is that somebody else contacted me, which is really sad, you know, but it's just part of depression. It is what it is. I can't really change it. I definitely delay in replying. I definitely procrastinate, you know. I've become better at that over the course of time with things like just having a thing pre-written that says, you know, sorry, I haven't gotten back to you, or maybe not sorry, but just like explaining that I've been depressed or whatever, and sort of explaining anything else that I might need to update anybody on. Like if I'm away from home or when I'm going to be back in the area or whatever, I will just make sure that whoever gets in touch with me, I send them that first. So it's not personalized. It's just so that I don't have to keep repeating myself, because you're very low energy emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually when you're depressed. So it's useful to have like little canned bits of text that you can just send to anyone, so you don't have to feel the exhaustion of knowing that you're about to explain something about your life again, you know. So I've become a bit better at that now, but I still can have this feeling of like that I need certain people to message me, or you know, I become very sad if somebody hasn't thought of me for a while, or hasn't gotten back to me, which I normally wouldn't be, because I like to be quite free and easy about when I get back to people. So why would I ever feel like people should get back to me, you know, in the immediacy of the moment? I normally wouldn't feel that way. But when you're depressed, things are weird, okay? You're not like operating as the normal version of yourself. So I wanted to mention that as well. It can be very difficult communicating, and it can be difficult even receiving communication that you really wanted, that you then panic about and overthink and stress over. It's just, it's hard out here in these depression streets, okay? Really it is. Not knowing what you want, okay? This is ridiculous. Like this is the final thing I'll say, or maybe I've got one more thing to say. But this thing, not knowing what the fuck you want, is so stressful. Like when I'm not depressed, I know exactly what music I want to listen to. I know to the band, to the album, what I want to listen to. I am so good at giving myself the musical prescription, okay? When it comes to music, it is medicine, and I am the witch doctor. I know what I need, I know what I want. I can wake up in the morning and immediately know that I need to listen to like black metal. I know exactly what band, you know, I know exactly what album. I wake up and I'm like, today I'm going to listen to Blue Nord and it's going to be awesome. I'm going to go for a walk and just really absorb it. I know when I want to go down memory lane. I know when I need hip hop, what kind of hip hop, like what order it's going to go in. Do I want a playlist? Do I not? Am I open to new stuff? Am I not? Do I just want to go and like back to Liquid Swords and just like spit it down the street? I know what I need. When I'm depressed, it's the total opposite. I've no idea what I want, no idea what I need. Nothing hits the spot. I can go from one genre to another, to things I love and know I love but haven't listened to for ages, to playlists where everything is new and would usually be really enlivening and exciting. Nothing hits the spot, and then you just get more depressed out of the sheer disappointment of not being able to find something to lift you out of your feeling. Same with reading, same with films, same with anything like that. Basically an extension of the clothing issue, I think. So that happens. Final thing I want to say before I stop this video, final thing, I know this is something that a lot of people will know about, and so it's not really a weird symptom, or it's not really a symptom that's not talked about much, I guess, but I wanted to mention I definitely have the illusion in my head when I'm depressed that if I buy myself something, I will feel better. And actually, you do feel better momentarily, but then it arrives and very quickly you just go back to emotional flatlining again. So I have found ways of dealing with that. I have taken pretty much all of the buying apps off of my phone. I took off like my Redbubble and my Etsy and like all the things I usually would open to give myself that sugary little lift, you know, of consumerism. Took all of that shit off, so that I'm not tempted to just immediately open a screen and go into the addictive feeling of like, what am I going to buy, you know, and keeping those wish lists of things, which are absolute, like, they are absolute, what's even the word? I'm trying to think of the word. They're addictive for people with depression. Like, someone with depression can have loads of things on their wish list for months on end and be really, really sensible and like, you know, fiscally reserved about what they get from that wish list. Then they go into a depressive episode and they've bought 20 things from their wish list if they have the money for that, whether or not it was actually in budget or not. They might end up spending money they really didn't have on shit they really didn't need for that temporary lift of knowing that something is coming to them. It is a crappy feeling. It is a really difficult feeling. Like I said, I've definitely tried to make it a bit better for myself over the course of time, but it still does happen. I'm going to wrap this up now because I feel like I've been talking forever and I feel like I've ranted and I've vented and I've gotten very animated, and now I want to hear from you. So if you have any comments for me on this, if you want to let me know how much something I said hit you deep in the feels because it really reflected your experience, let me know. If there's anything I left off of my own personal list of weird symptoms that you would like to share, please do share. There's so much that I didn't talk about in this video. I'm sure that this is going to be one of a number of videos of this nature. Like I said, I might come back and talk more about my specific diagnosis in another video. I might talk about body dysmorphia. I'm definitely going to talk about nostalgia in greater depth. But for now, this has been a list of weird, annoying symptoms that I experience when I'm going through depression. And for all of you out there who have depression, stay safe, stay sane as much as you can. Mwah, so much love to you and strength to you, and blessed be, darlings.